Hi guys, and welcome to today's video. In this video you're going to learn how to load new scenes. And before we begin whatever we are going to do, I want you to first look at the example I have built so far, just as usual. And now if I click on play, see what happens. When this hits the ground, it loads another scene or another window, and this window represents the scene, right? So we have to get the terminology right. So this is a scene. So if we go to our scenes folder, you won't see that because I pre-created it, if that's worked. So this is level 1, which I renamed. This is level 1, and if I double click on level 2, let me save whatever I have, and this is another scene, right? So this is what scenes are, different windows, if you don't think it that way. Now, as always, we're going to start from scratch. So let me delete this level 2, as much as I don't want to actually don't have this beautiful picture anymore, but we're going to create it anyway. So let's delete that. Delete. Let me go to our script and that one. Yep. So let me delete the scripts that I also created, which is Pride Handler, that's how I named it, and Scene Changer. There we go. Delete. Delete. There we go. Now, what we are left off with is just level 1, save. Oh, I didn't delete that, really? Okay, there we go. Now, all we have is level 1. And currently, if I run that, let's just remind ourselves of what we achieved the last video. These sprites just stop when they hit the ground. Okay, that's cool, right? But now what we want really to happen is when either this object or whatever object you have hits the ground, then we want to load the next scene or the next window, the next stage of our game, if you want to think it that way. So okay, let's start by doing that. So first, let's create our new scene, our new level, our new stage. So go and actually first, if you haven't already, create a scenes folder, go in there, go to create, and then select a new scene here, and then rename the scene. For example, in our case it will be level 2, but you can name it whatever you want. Let's click on level 2, and as you can see, it doesn't really have anything, so we're the ones that will actually have to add something. Now let's remove this. Actually no, let's just have it. Yeah, let's just have it here so you have more space. Now let's create our game, and let's create something simple, something similar that I did already with the last image that you saw, and it will be just really bad image, but that will do for now. There we go. Let's create this. Now let's rotate that to 34. There we go, so it looks a bit like a hand. Now let's duplicate that, and you duplicate something by pressing Ctrl D, and you also need to have selected the element. So if I have selected this arm now and then I press Ctrl D, I can just move it and I'll have 2 of them. That's called duplication of an object. Now let's select that. Now what we want to do is basically rotate that to the other end. How would you do that? Well, we go again to our Z index and we put minus. There we go. So we've got our beautiful arms, and we only missed the legs. Oops. A bit fatty. Let's make him a bit slimmer. Maybe too slim, but whatever. That'll do. Let's duplicate that. There we go. We've got our legs. Now let's make the eyes. So I'll make them really tiny. There we go. Let's change the color to red. Why not? Move it here. Let's duplicate that. Actually, it looks a bit creepy, isn't it? Anyway, let's change the color to whatever. And you can also select multiple objects. So you select one and then you hold Control and you select another one. So now I have selected both arms, so I can change the color of both of them. There we go. Actually, I'll just leave it as it is. Well, I might as well just change the hat or the crown to that. So it's actually a crown, and I can change this 3. There we go. So it has skin, right? Well, we could also add hands. Well, okay, let's not add hands. There we go. So we'll have this for now. Now let's also add ground. There we go. Let's expand that. So it's not actually flying. And now let's create our sprite. There we go. Let's make it tiny. So in our wannabe game, this will represent the boss, and this will represent us, our character. So now let's actually add some text, so we can actually differentiate whether this is the boss and this is us. So go ahead and click on right click on the hierarchy, go to UI, and you'll see that we have 2 options for text. We've got just a normal text, and we also got TextMeshPro. So in order for you to see that, make sure you're using actually an updated version of Unity. So go and select TextMeshPro, and now, since I have already used it, you probably see something on the screen saying import TMP essentials or something like that. Click on it because your project doesn't really know what TextMeshPro actually is. So import it in your Unity project. That would take like a couple of seconds. So now that you have TextMeshPro and that we have added it to our canvas, it will actually appear somewhere here, but we need to move it into the canvas that it added for us. So now let's move this game window here so we can better see how it actually aligns everything. So let's move that on top of our character head. There we go. Now let's change the text. So you come to the inspector after you have selected the TextMeshPro component object, sorry, and then literally just type whatever you want. So let's just say boss, right? Now let's move it here, and we can as well just adjust the width of the container. There we go. So we've got this boss. Now let's add another TextMeshPro. There we go, and put it here. And I'll explain why you would want to use TextMeshPro over the normal text in a second. Now let's type this to be us. Not USA, but it's us. There we go. There we go. So that's the boss, and that's us. Just so you better have an idea of what's happening, really. Alright, now let's again select our TextMeshPro object, and as you can see, if you come to the inspector, you have a ton of options. Let's add another, just a normal text object, and as you can see, it really doesn't have that many options. Like, you can compare them if you want to, but if we go to TextMeshPro, we've got the color, which I'm pretty sure, yeah, you can also change the color of a normal text component. But the cool thing with TextMeshPro is you can basically go to a website called that font, and I'm actually going to do it for the next video, or when we actually want to polish something. For now, we don't want to polish this because that's really basic stuff that we're doing now. But the thing that I'm trying to say is you can import whatever font you want from the font.com website, which I'm not going to show now, but I will in the future videos. For now, just think of TextMeshPro as it gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of design of your font. You can add any font. For now, we don't really have many fonts, we just have that default one. Okay, so apart from the font asset, you can also align it however you want. I think you also can with the normal. Oh yeah, okay, you can also, but you also you only have this. Oh, never mind, you actually have both of them. Yeah. You've got wrapping overflow, and with TextMeshPro you also got the face. So basically, these are just more optional colors that you can add. You can also have thickness. You can also change the thickness. There we go. We're changing it a bit. You can also change the softness. So you can, you can pretty much just play around with the color, with everything. You can change the text if you don't want just post and us. But for now, that will do, right? So basically, as a rule of thumb, you would use TextMeshPro if you want to customize, if you want to have flexibility over your font color, all that type of stuff. But if you don't want anything, like if you don't want anything fancy apart from text and basically the functionality of changing that text color, then you're just better off using text or whatever. You know, it doesn't really matter. But let's delete this text now, and we're left off with this here. Alright, for now this will be our level 2 scene, but hopefully we will actually expand on it in the next videos. So currently what we actually want to do, what is our workflow? Now let's Control S that, so let's save our scene, which is level 2, go to level 1. And what we want to really do is, there we go, let's run our game for now, see what's happening. Well, what's happening really is these objects are falling to the ground. Now, what we want to do is, as soon as any of these objects, doesn't matter which one, falls on the ground, we want to actually load the next scene, which is called level 2. There we go. Now, there are many ways of actually achieving that. One way could be of adding a script and we attach it to every single object. So we attach it to this sprite, and we attach it to this sprite, and then we attach it to whatever sprite we actually want to create. But the problem with that is, why not just why don't we just create a script and append it to that square, to that ground, because that would be better, because we could only say whatever object hits that object, which is the ground, then load the next scene. You know, it just seems more efficient, and it is more efficient than appending this script to every single object, right? For this purpose. So let's create a script that will append to that ground rather than every single object. So let's go to, let's select our square, go to add a component. Oh, actually, I'm going to remove that. So let's go and add a component. So that would be, let's say, load next, no, not that, but let's just say sprite handler. That's not really a good name, but that will do for now. Or maybe sprite handler fall, so it's a bit more clear. You know that this is when they fall. There we go, we've created our, let's compile, there we go, it's added it. Now let's move this, let's move our script to the scripts folder, just so it's nice and tidy. We probably should also move this, so let's say folder, players, let's select these. You select one, then you basically hold shift and select the end of the selected objects or files in this case, move them to players. There we go, everything's organized. Now, okay, we have created our sprite handler, which will basically do all the logic that is basically loading the next scene. However, there's one thing that we're missing, which is we want to create another scene now, another object actually, and append another script to it. So let's go to our hierarchy, right click and go to UI, actually not UI, but just create an empty object, and let's rename that to the actual scene changer. So basically this will be the object that will actually change the scene. So the ground will have a script that will be using that. Oops, I already have that actually before the video, so let me remove that. So basically this will be the key tool that will actually make the scene changing, and the ground will only use that as a tool. Okay, so now let's go to our scene changer, add a component which will be a script, and the script will be scene changer. There we go, scene changer. Let it add it, and after it adds it, let's open it. There we go. So now that's our method that we actually want to do all of the loading of scene logic and functionality basically. So what do we do? Well, basically we have to include the scene manager. For now, just type scene and then hit Control dot, so it adds the scene management. Now, what we basically want to say is, let's say void start, and on the start we want to add an object which will be basically SceneManager dot load scene, right? We want to load the scene, and as a parameter we want to put the name of the scene, right? So basically, what is the name of our scene? Well, if we go to scenes, and we have it named as level 2, but you might have it named something else. So put whatever you have named it to. So in our case, it's level 2, and keep in mind the spaces are important. So that's what we want to add. That's pretty straightforward, right? So now when I run this game, this should load level 2, right? So let's run that and see if it actually loads it. Yeah, it loads it. But one thing, if you actually run this, having the code that I have here, this wouldn't load it for you. And the reason it loads it for me is because I actually made it before the video. I forgot to remove that. But go on File, and then click on Build Settings, and you'll see here Scenes in Build. Now I've added that, but now that's what you should see, right? So you're seeing the level 1 is added there by default, but we want to add our level 2 there. So actually, before I add it, let's rerun that game. Now that I have removed the levels 2 from there, if I run this, yep, now nothing is happening, because even though we're saying, okay, load me level 2, but Unity doesn't know what level 2 is because it's not specified in the build settings. So we need to specify that. And how do we specify it? Well, it's actually pretty simple. We just move the scene in there. There we go. And then we just close that window. And that's it. So now, again, if I run that, yeah, actually, yeah. I was like, wait, they didn't hit the ground. But we don't have that functionality yet. We're just loading the level 2 scene on the start. However, what we don't want is to actually load that scene, so we want to remove that. However, what we want to do is to actually have a method that loads level 2. So when these objects hit the ground, we want them to actually activate that method that loads the new scene. Makes sense, right? So what we'll do is just say public, because this method we want it to be accessed from this sprite handler, which will be appended to our ground. So the sprite handler will call this method, so that's why we need it public. Then we'll just say void, because it's not going to return anything back to the sprite handler or to the caller of the function. And we just say public void load next scene, or how do I say it? Because if it's load scene, it's already in there. So let's just say load level. Yeah, we'll just call it load level, because in our case, every single scene is a level. So we can have it named like that. So let's just say load level. And let's say we want to load a specific scene based on the parameter. So we'll say scene name. So it's just more clear. So we are expecting a parameter that is of type string that will act as a scene name. And all we have to do is just say SceneManager load scene, and we want to type to pass in that parameter that actually the caller is passing. So which will be of scene name, which will be of type string. So then let's save that and go to our sprite handler. I don't know if I actually appended that to it. Yeah, I have. Sprite handler fo. There we go. Now what we want to do is pretty much just access the scene changer. And how do we actually access it? Well, there are a couple of ways really, but in our case, let's just make it serialized field. So we want to be able to pass a scene changer, right? This is a scene changer. So scene changer, and then we'll just say scene changer. There we go. Now if I save that and I go to where was it? If I go to the square, we should see a scene changer. There we go. So now what we want to do is pass in this scene changer to there. So now we actually have access to that method here from that class because we passed a scene changer. Sorry. And then what we want to do is say void on collision enter 2D. As you can see, it has already been built, written, I mean, this method, and this is from using the physics engine. So if I go to here, as you can see, it has a collider, right? In the last video, we appended a collider. If you don't know what the collider is, I urge you to actually watch the previous video and then come back to it. So this green line basically is the collider, right? So we have a method which is on collision enter 2D, which is basically if another object which has a collider touches this object which is another collider, right? And when this happens, what do we want to do? We want to say scene changer, and then we will want to say load level. And which level do we want to load? Well, if you go to scenes, let's save that, go to scenes, well, that's level 2. So we literally just say level 2. Now, whatever object collides, let me open level 1. Now, whatever object collides with this ground here, with this sprite, it will actually load scene 2. So now if we run that, and this collides with, there we go, it loaded level 2. And just to show you that no matter which object actually touches the ground, let me change the gravity of him. So this actually falls before that one. So what we need to say is, let's say 1, and this will be 0.5. There we go, save, run that. Now this should fall before that one. And as you can see, it loaded the next scene. What we could do is basically add this load level on collision enter again to every single object, to every single sprite that's actually falling, but that doesn't really seem efficient, really, because we need to append it to every single one, which in some cases that could be beneficial, but for that case, we only want to append it to our ground. And I think that will be it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and as you can see, we're actually building on whatever we have. So possibly this will become a game, even though it really doesn't look like one, right? But hopefully it will look like in the future. But for now, thank you guys for watching, and see you on the next video.